this isn't theory. It's not a game. What you're about to read is what some of us have been warning about for decades, and getting silenced, ridiculed, or worse for doing so. The so-called Protocols of Toronto aren't some dusty manifesto. They're a playbook, a roadmap written by people who don't see us as human beings, but as data, livestock, assets to be tracked, measured, and controlled. They've been meeting behind closed doors since the 50s, bankrolled by the usual suspects. Old money, global bankers, the same names that always pop up when you follow the trail far enough. Back then, they talked about building a global information highway. Today, we call it the internet. They said it would connect the world, but what they really meant was trap it. Every click, every like, every search, every face in front of a screen, it's all part of the net. They called it the web for a reason. They predicted the rise of viral videos, not as entertainment, but as distraction. They knew that if they could flood our minds with noise, memes, scandals, fake outrage, we'd stop asking real questions. Meanwhile, they'd be building profiles on every one of us. Not just what we buy or watch, but what we fear, what we crave, what breaks us. They wrote back in the 80s that in this new global society, no individual with potential value would escape their system. That's not paranoia. That's a quote. They called themselves 666, not even hiding it. They believed that once we were all plugged in, digitally tagged, emotionally manipulated, spiritually numb, they'd finally have peace. Their kind of peace. People like Serget Monast tried to expose this. He's dead. So are others who got too close. And the ones who survive, censored, deplatformed, erased, you won't hear their names on the big channels. You'll hear about lizard people and flat earth instead, because that's how they discredit the real stuff. Bury the signal in noise. This is the intro. The rest is darker. But if you're still reading, you're probably ready for it. The protocols. Multiplying several times over the leisure society that has proven so profitable to us to this day. Utilizing the invention of video, which we financed, and the games associated with it, allowed us to corrupt the moral compass of youth. It allowed us to offer them the possibility of satisfying all their instincts. A being stripped of their senses and enslaved by them, we know has no ideals or inner strength to defend anything. They become an individualist by nature and represent the perfect candidate whom we can easily mold according to our desires and priorities. For example, remember how easily our predecessors were able to lead all of German youth at the beginning of the century by exploiting their disillusionment. Encourage student protests for all causes related to ecology. Mandatory protection will be a major issue once we have forced nation-states to exchange their internal debt to avoid losing 33% of their territories that remain in a wild state. To fill the inner void of these young people by introducing them from an early age to the world of computers. To do this, we will use their educational system, a slave at the service of another slave who will be under our control. On another level, let us establish international free trade as the absolute priority for the economic survival of nation-states. This new economic concept will help us hasten the decline of nationalists in all nations by isolating them in different factions, and when the time is right, vigorously pitting them against each other through internal wars that will ultimately lead to the ruin of these nations. To ensure the success of such an undertaking at all costs, let us make sure that our agents, already infiltrated in the intergovernmental affairs and migration offices of nation-states, fundamentally alter the laws pertaining to those offices. These alterations will essentially aim to open the doors of Western countries to an increasingly massive influx of migrants into their borders, migration that we will have instigated separately by fomenting local conflicts here and there. Through well-orchestrated media campaigns targeting public opinion in the nation-states, we will provoke the arrival of a significant influx of refugees, resulting in the destabilization of their domestic economies and increased racial tension within their territories. We will ensure that foreign extremist groups are part of these migratory flows, which will facilitate the political, economic, and social destabilization of the target nations. This free trade, which, in reality, is not free, since it is already controlled by us from the top of the economic hierarchy, allows us to separate it into 3 side commissions: Asia, America, and Europe. This will provide us with discord within the nation-states through the increase in unemployment connected with the reconstruction of our transnational companies. We will slowly but surely transfer our transnational corporations to new countries committed to the idea of the market economy, such as the countries of Eastern Europe, Russia, and China, for example. For now, we don't care whether their populations represent a vast pool of new consumers. What interests us is, first and foremost, gaining access to the slave labor at a good price, without unions, offered by these countries and those of the Third World. Furthermore, aren't there governments we created? Don't they request foreign aid and loans from our International Monetary Fund and our World Bank? These transfers offer us several advantages. They help cultivate in these new populations the illusion of economic liberation and political freedom, while in reality, we will dominate them through their appetite for profit and a level of debt they will never be able to repay. With regard to Western populations, we will maintain their illusion of a welfare economy, since imports from these countries will not lead to higher prices. However, without them initially realizing it, more and more industries will be forced to close due to these outward transfers of resources from Western countries. These closures will increase unemployment and cause a significant loss of revenue for nation-states. In this way, we will begin a global economy on a worldwide scale that will completely escape the control of nation-states. This new economy will be above all else. No political or union pressures will have any power over it. It will dictate its own world policies and force a political reorganization, but one that aligns with our global priorities. This independent economy will have no law but our laws, and thus we will establish a global mass culture. Through international control of television and the media, we will institute a new culture, but a leveled, uniform one for all, with no future creation escaping our control. Future artists will reflect our image, or they will not be able to survive. The time when independent cultural creations jeopardized our globalist projects, as happened so many times in the past, will be over. 10. Through this economy, we will be able to use the military forces of these nation-states, such as, for example, those of the United States, for humanitarian purposes. In reality, these forces will allow us to subjugate recalcitrant countries to our will. In this way, third world countries and similar nations will not be able to escape our desire to use their populations as slaves. To control the world market, we will have to divert productivity from its primary purpose, freeing humanity from the deprivations of working conditions. We will steer it against humanity, subjugating it to our economic system, where it will have no choice but to become our slave, and even worse, a future criminal. All these transfers to foreign countries by our multinational corporations and the global restructuring of the economy will aim, among other things, to increase unemployment in Western countries. This situation will be even more likely given that, initially, we will have promoted the massive importation of basic goods into nation-states, and similarly, we will have saturated the employment of their inhabitants with the production of services they will never be able to afford. These extreme conditions will multiply by millions the number of recipients of all kinds of social benefits, the illiterate and the homeless. Through the loss of millions of jobs in the primary sector, thanks to the masking of the flight of capital outside of the nation-states, it will be possible for us to mortally endanger social harmony through the expectation of a civil war. Note: revolutions provoked by the same Freemasonry. These international manipulations of governments and populations of nation-states will provide us with the pretext to use our International Monetary Fund to push Western governments to adopt austerity budgets under the guise of the illusory reduction of national debt, the hypothetical preservation of their international solvency, international credit rating, and the impossible preservation of social peace. Through these emergency budgetary measures, we will destroy the financing capacity of these nation-states for their mega-projects, which constitute a direct threat to our control of the world economy. Incidentally, All these austerity measures will enable us to thwart national aspirations for modern structures in the fields of energy, agriculture, transportation, and new technologies. These same measures will offer us the perfect opportunity to implement an ideology of economic competition. Within nation-states, this will translate into voluntary income reductions and voluntary retirements with medals awarded for services rendered, which will open the doors to the widespread establishment of our control technology. In this perspective, these social transformations will help us fundamentally change, replace retirees, and infiltrate the workforce of nation-states, police, and military. Under the pretext of current needs, and without raising any suspicion, we will rid ourselves once and for all of all individuals with a Judeo-Christian conscience. This restructuring of the police and military forces will allow us to dismiss, retire, the older working class without any protest, as well as all those who do not transmit our globalist principles. These will be replaced by young recruits, Freemasons, lacking conscience and morality, and having already been trained for it, inclined toward the reckless use of our electronic network technology. At the same time, and still under the pretext of budget cuts, we will deal with the transfer of military bases from nation-states to the United Nations. From this perspective, we will work towards the reorganization of the United Nations, international mandate. From a peacekeeping force, without decision-making power, we will transform it into an intervention force, in which we will merge the military forces of nation-states into a homogeneous whole. This will allow us to carry out, without combat, the demilitarization of all these states, so that none of them in the future will be strong enough independent to challenge our world power. To accelerate this transfer process, we will involve the existing forces of nation-states in unsolvable conflicts. In this way, and with the help of the media outlets we control, we will demonstrate to the population the incapacity and futility of this force in its current form. The resulting frustration, pushed to its breaking point at the desired moment, will help compel the populations of nation-states to beg international institutions to establish a multinational force as soon as possible, in order to protect peace at any cost. The emergence of this global desire for a multinational military force, peace, will run parallel to the establishment, within nation-states, of a multi-jurisdictional intervention force. This combination of police and military personnel, created under the pretext of increased political and social instability, Great Reset, collapses within states crushed by economic burdens, will allow us to better control Western populations. To this end, the excessive use of identification and electronic databases of individuals will provide us with complete surveillance of all target populations. This restructuring of the police and military within and outside nation-states will allow all of this to converge toward the need to establish a world judicial center. This center will allow the various national state police forces to have rapid access to the data banks of individuals who pose a potential danger to us on the planet. Note: citizens whom the military will remove from their homes and take to FEMA camps. The emergence of greater judicial efficiency and the increasingly close ties, Freemasons denouncing their neighbors, created and maintained with the military, will help demonstrate the need for an international court accompanied by a world judicial system, the former for individual civil and criminal cases, and the latter for nations. As these new needs become increasingly accepted, it will be of paramount importance to us to complete gun control within the borders of nation-states as soon as possible. To this end, we will accelerate Plan Alpha, launched in the 1960s by some of our predecessors. This plan originally had two objectives, which remain valid today. First, to create a climate of insecurity among the population through the use of gun-wielding lunatics. Note: false flag attacks, thus enabling greater gun control. And second, to direct acts of violence so that responsibility falls on religious extremists, individuals sympathetic to the mainstream, traditional religion, Christianity, or people claiming to have privileged direct communication with God. Note: crisis actors. Today, with the goal of accelerating this gun control, we can use the collapse of economic conditions of nation-states, which will lead to a total destabilization of the social sphere, and therefore an increase in violence. I have no need to remind you, nor show you, brothers, the foundations of this control of firearms. Without it, it would be almost impossible for us to bring the populations of the nation-states we target to their knees. Note, certainly not in the USA. Remember the success our predecessors had controlling Germany in 1930 with the new laws implemented at that time, laws upon which the current laws of nation-states regarding the same control are based. The final steps are related to the Omega phase, based on trials conducted in the early 1970s. They involve the worldwide implementation of electromagnetic weapons. Climate change will bring about the destruction of crops. Under these conditions, agricultural lands will be ruined. The future of population control in these nation-states necessarily involves our absolute control of global food production and through the takeover of the planet's main food routes. To achieve this, the use of electromagnetic radiation, among other methods, is necessary to destabilize the climate of most agriculturally producing states. The poisoning of nature will accelerate if, due to population growth, unrestricted production is encouraged. The denaturing, through artificial means, of everyday food products, the poisoning of nature through excessive and unconscious use of land, and the massive use of chemicals in agriculture. All this, brothers, will bring certain doom to the food industries of nation-states. The use of electromagnetic energies to provoke earthquakes in the most important industrial regions of nation-states will contribute to accelerating the economic collapse of the states that pose the greatest threat to us. Thus, the urgent need for our new world order will also increase. Who could suspect us? Who would suspect the methods we use? Those who dare to oppose us by circulating information about the existence and content of our conspiracy will become suspects in the eyes of their nation's authorities and population. Thanks to the disinformation, lies, hypocrisy, and individualism we have instilled in the people, note, Masonic lodges of nation-states, humanity will become the declared enemy of humanity, Cain against Abel. Thus, these independent individuals, Christians and dissidents, who are the most dangerous to us, will be considered by their peers, Masons, as enemies rather than liberators. The enslavement of children, the plundering of the third world by the rich, the ideology of respect for individual freedoms, propagated in Judeo-Christian churches and in all nation-states, obscurantism considered a source of pride, interracial conflicts, and our latest achievement, budget cuts. All this finally allows us to realize our ancestral dream, to establish our new world order. Encourage student protests for all causes related to ecology. Mandatory protection will be a major issue once we have forced nation-states to exchange their internal debt to avoid losing 33% of their territories that remain in a wild state. To fill the inner void of these young people by introducing them, from an early age, to the world of computers. To do this, we will use their educational system, a slave at the service of another slave who will be under our control. On another level, let us establish international free trade as the absolute priority for the economic survival of nation-states. This new economic concept will help us hasten the decline of nationalists in all nations by isolating them in different factions, and when the time is right, vigorously pitting them against each other through internal wars that will ultimately lead to the ruin of these nations. To ensure the success of such an undertaking at all costs, let us make sure that our agents, already infiltrated in the intergovernmental affairs and migration offices of nation-states, fundamentally alter the laws pertaining to those offices. These alterations will essentially aim to open the doors of Western countries to an increasingly massive influx of migrants into their borders, migration that we will have instigated separately by fomenting local conflicts here and there. Through well-orchestrated media campaigns targeting public opinion in the nation-states, we will provoke the arrival of a significant influx of refugees, resulting in the destabilization of their domestic economies and increased racial tension within their territories. We will ensure that foreign extremist groups are part of these migratory flows, which will facilitate the political, economic, and social destabilization of the target nations. This free trade, which, in reality, is not free, since it is already controlled by us from the top of the economic hierarchy, allows us to separate it into 3 side commissions: Asia, America, and Europe. This will provide us with discord within the nation-states through the increase in unemployment connected with the reconstruction of our transnational companies. We will slowly but surely transfer our transnational corporations to new countries committed to the idea of the market economy, such as the countries of Eastern Europe, Russia, and China, for example. For now, we don't care whether their populations represent a vast pool of new consumers. What interests us is, first and foremost, gaining access to the slave labor, at a good price, without unions, offered by these countries and those of the Third World. Furthermore, aren't there governments we created? Don't they request foreign aid and loans from our International Monetary Fund and our World Bank? These transfers offer us several advantages. They help cultivate in these new populations the illusion of economic liberation and political freedom, while in reality, we will dominate them through their appetite for profit and a level of debt they will never be able to repay. With regard to Western populations, we will maintain their illusion of a welfare economy, since imports from these countries will not lead to higher prices. However, without them initially realizing it, more and more industries will be forced to close due to these outward transfers of resources from Western countries. These closures will increase unemployment and cause a significant loss of revenue for nation-states. Conclusion: there are 34 protocols, but the last one is actually like a conclusion, hence the 33, the Masonic number. In this way, we will begin a global economy on a worldwide scale that will completely escape the control of nation-states. This new economy will be above all else. No political or union pressures will have power over it. It will dictate its own world policies and force a political reorganization, but in accordance with our global priorities.